I'm Ted Garcia. He's a San Diego boy. Grew up in Scripps Ranch, went to San Diego State. Then he went to L.A. and started a new career as a male stripper. He's ripping the lid off of that industry and talking about his life, the highs, the lows, and the mistakes in his new book, Tales from the Strip. Andy, thank you for joining us.
I couldn't be happier, man. This is awesome. Being a San Diego boy, it's really cool to be talking to you.
Well, no, thank you for sharing. So what do you think you were like as a kid growing up in San Diego?
You know, I didn't really realize it until I got older, but San Diego's the greatest city in the world. I mean, they don't call it America's most beautiful city for nothing. I was spoiled. I lived in Scripps Ranch. It was a nice area and, you know, a wooded area, and it was still 15 minutes from the Hoya Shores. So I had a great little world, and I almost lived in like a San Diego bubble, so to speak. It was great. I have no regrets, and I had an amazing childhood. So I'll always love San Diego, and I'll probably end up, retiring and living out the rest of my days there.
Most of us will. So let's fast forward. From a kid, you went to San Diego State, and then somehow you ended up in LA and you became a stripper. How did that happen?
Yeah, I went to school for journalism and political science in college, and I thought, maybe I'm going to become a journalist and travel the world and get into some crazy adventures. And then somehow along the way, I ended up moving to LA. I'd starred on a couple of reality shows in my early 20s, and me and my best friend just kind of found ourselves in LA, living in a studio apartment, trying to make rent. And at the time, I think I was a trainer at a gym locally, and my roommate actually was kind of like a flashy guy, and he was dancing, and he had a party one time, and it was him and a friend, and the guy bailed, and he begged me to tag along. So I put on a fedora and some suspenders, and we went and danced for these ladies, and I made $600, and that was more than I was making in an entire week working at the gym, 40 hours. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And then before you know it, I was one of the more popular dancers in the Southern California area.
So, we have these images of male and female strippers with booze, with drugs, with sex. Is that realistic? Is that what the business is really like?
Not really. A lot of people kind of have that misconception that comes with it. And it definitely can. And in some ways it does. But, you're kind of your own boss. You kind of dictate what's really going to happen. So for me, I'm always trying to be professional because, and especially in this era, I don't want any trouble. I don't want any legal problems. I don't want to be liable for anything. I'm there to put on a show. I'm not a sex worker. I'm an entertainer. So you're hiring me to put on a show. I put on a great show. I bring all my props. It's hard to get all boozed up and drugged up when I've got to worry about my costume and my speaker and my iPhone and all this stuff.
So where did this lead you?
Well, it definitely led me down a dark and perilous path. I mean, it wasn't, I tried making good decisions, but when you're dancing on the weekends and driving around, you're bound to get into trouble, which is what happened to me. I ended up getting into some trouble. I got arrested for a DUI, and I crashed my car. And by the grace of God, I was able to kind of get away from all that and learn a lot of valuable lessons along the way that, when you're young, you think you're going to live forever. And, my mortality got tested. And luckily I was able to come through on the other side with some great stories and a lot of insight into some things that most people never really get to see.
Was the book a kind of a type of therapy for you?
Yeah, I actually started writing my debut novel, Tales from the Strip, right after I got a DUI and I crashed my car. And I should have probably been in the hospital, but I wasn't. I was just sitting at home with no money, feeling really down in the dumps. And I had thought about being a writer since I was a kid. I always dreamed about being a writer. I just never wrote. I read a lot. And I tried my hand at a few scripts, but as far as like writing like literature, I never actually put pencil to pad. And I was at my lowest point, and one of my best friends was just like, "You should just start writing about all your stuff." And it became really cathartic, and it ended up becoming the best thing I've ever done, and definitely the thing that I'm most proud of, because I tried not to shy away from the gritty details. Instead, anything that I was kind of slightly embarrassed about or felt maybe ashamed of, rather than tuck it away, I brought it to the forefront, because those are things that people can relate to, and those are the things that I think people can see themselves in, and understand that nobody's perfect. And if I was embarrassed about it, I think once you read the book, I think it only builds the character.
The book is amazing. It's called Tales from the Strip. So well written. And Andy, you're a good guy, a San Diego boy, and Andy Espinosa Long, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
I'm Ted Garcia, Kogo News.